Really?
Well, he will in a
he
moment.
won't get.
Now, we're probably gonna get some echoes in a moment until I, do the things that need to be done. So you're saying right-click on the tab, Alex?
Yeah, right-click on the tab, and then you'll, something's happening.
Reload, duplicate, and mute.
I did say right-click on the tab.
Here we go.
Ooh. Looks like we might have gone, are we going live to a different spot?
Well, that's why I wanted to do this earlier. I was afraid that might happen. So, let's see.
All right, stand by, everybody.
Oh
That's what
dear.
I've been saying, go to my channel instead of the specific link, because I was afraid of that. However,
Well, there's, yeah.
people never listen to me.
Well, there is a way to set it up so it stays connected, but
Oh, we have 10 minutes and 16 seconds.
So what I have is, it's got the right label, Dare to Be Human, Storytelling Event, Friday, 3/20, YouTube. Right, I am getting that,
but did you create a new? I can share some, I've got instructions I can share with you next time.
if you think there's time to change it now, we can.
I don't think so. I don't know how you set it up the first time, so.
It says live on YouTube, doesn't it?
You definitely are.
View stream on your YouTube.
Are you looking at the link from previously?
Oh, at the top of our Zoom, it
Mhm.
says live.
I'm
on-
talking about the link that we shared earlier is now not the link.
No, I understand, so we're streaming somewhere to something, right?
Yeah, somewhere. What's the, I guess I could go to the page and grab the link and then put it in the
I
chat.
can do that right now.
But not everybody's gonna be able to get to the chat.
I can put it on Facebook.
Mhm.
So, so,
I mean, the one that we're live on, we should just keep,
I'm not arguing that.
yeah.
Here we are.
You, right, if people just go to Michael Burns Mopco, they've got it, correct?
No. I think so. I don't know, let's see.
It will, but everything's set up to take them to the,
Live now, Dare to Be Human Storytelling Event, Friday, 3/20.
right, but they're going to a different link if you look at your videos. There'll also be a video that's counting down.
I wonder, I'm not gonna do it.
Can you get rid of that one, I wonder?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Do we get rid of the dead one?
I don't know.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And we are going to take that one.
Oops.
Okay.
Or, maybe just not work at all. Did it not let me link in the chat? Did you see, if you look at the chat, does it look like, did you see a link inside of it to another YouTube video? I think maybe it prevents you from,
It'll look funny. Why am I not able to chat?
What I'll do real quick is try to see if I can change it in Eventbrite so at least the last wave of invites will not be the wrong link.
So. Do our storytellers all have the right one now to send out to their folks? I'll send that to them.
You have the right one?
I'm on the live one right now.
So I'm sharing in the chat, guys, the link that is the stream that we're actually streaming to now. The one that we shared before is sort of a dead end at this point, unfortunately. Sorry about that. But the one that I just shared is the one to sort of send out. So if you could send that to your peeps, and apologies for the mix-up there. Am I muted right now? Is your audio muted, Michael? No? Well, I don't know why I can't be heard then, because I should be able to be heard for... Am I muted right now? Your audio muted, Michael? Everybody else is muted in the chat, so I can't hear if anybody can... Now I'm muted.
Hold on, Alex, I'm sorry. I'm listening to YouTube and I need to be here. You are muted.
What about the audio of Kat and I on yours?
Hold on. See, I'm hearing that just fine.
Okay.
Right? So you should be getting a prompt to unmute in Zoom.
Okay, but that'll be my computer audio.
That's correct.
Okay. So then I'm going to be heard.
Yeah.
What about the audio of Kat and I? I'm talking? Okay, but that was Hi, Peter. I'm still talking, so we're still going. Yeah. All right, so everybody that made a reservation, I'm muted now, will be able to look at the right link, at least in the last email there.
And for the other link, you put something in the chat?
Yeah, I put something in the chat, so people that are in the, our storytellers here, you can see, if you look at the chat, there is a link to share there. That's where we're streaming to right now. The other YouTube link. Well, I don't know if, I'm going to mute myself because I don't think we have and still have you all with us and able to hear these storytellers as they share these. What are you motioning at, off?
I just wanted to say hi.
Okay. You try to get Michael to say hi?
No, I was trying to get Michael to let me say hi.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
You can't. I think you
I
can.
know what you want. You want that.
Ah, yes.
Say hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Hi.
Alex, don't let me interrupt you. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we were gonna start the show off. We decided by a coin flip, I think was how it went, right? I was gonna share a quick story before we started to introduce you to all of our storytellers. Actually, why don't we, Michael, if we could just maybe we'll say hi to everybody first, so people know who they're waiting for, who they're waiting to see as we go around. So we're gonna go around in the order that you're gonna see them, in order of appearance. So first we have Sue Chiampa. I'm sure I butchered your last name, Sue.
Sue wants to unmute yourself. I can't seem to do it. There.
You actually are pretty on the spot. So
Oh,
we mispronounce it as Chiampa, but Chiampa, or what, I forget what you actually said, but it was
Me too.
familiar. There we go.
Awesome.
Hi.
awesome. We also have Angela Combis,
Hi.
Richard Lovrich,
Oops, that's not Richard Loveridge.
that's not Richard, that's Sue.
That's right. This is Richard Loveridge. And Richard is muted. Hold on, Richard, hold on. We're getting there. There. try
Hello, this is Richard Loveridge and not Sue.
And finally, winding up a little bit, so Michael will be ready to switch to the last person as he comes up. William Hughes will be our last storyteller of the evening.
The unmute is really not cooperating with me. Will, can you unmute your,
I'm unmuted.
there, yeah, Richard is unmuted.
And here comes, right into your face,
I would like to
Hughes.
introduce.
Thank you. It was very nice of Zoom to ask me if I was okay with being unmuted. I must say, thank you very much for having me. And this, even with all this is the best group meeting I've had yet working from home. This is the fewest technical bugs.
Yeah.
That's right.
We'll get there.
So
No,
you've
we
met
won't.
all- No. So you've met all your storytellers, and now I guess I'll start us off with the first story of the evening. And I'm just going to keep with the house mic, if that's all right, Michael. I'm looking off camera. Awesome. So this story, some of you might have heard before, but it's one that I've it's the first one I thought of before the story tonight. So if any of you are unfamiliar with it, I'll describe it a little bit. But I live in the city of Troy, and one of the sort of drawbacks of having the schedule that I have, where I have off Sundays and Mondays, because I'm working here at the theater, sort of service workers kind of hours. Because I have the day off Monday, I have the pleasure of dealing with the strange parking rules of Troy, New York. So I have to leave my apartment at 11 o'clock to go and shift my car ever so slightly somewhere else on the street so that they will just leave me alone. But Troy, being one of these cities on the being rebuilt, is very hungry for any amount of income that it can get. So people literally kind of come down and swarm the streets at 11 o'clock, all these local people, to get in their cars and sort of shift around in this strange little Tetris that we all play together to make sure that none of us are giving another $50 to the city of Troy. So as I'm sitting in my apartment on a Monday, I'm in my pajama bottoms and, band t-shirt, as I am accustomed to. And I went to grab my keys and do the usual shuffle. So as I walk out the door, I open my door onto my staircase, which is, I live on the 4th floor, and it is this very tall, very angled stairway that all my guests and visitors absolutely adore. So as I come out on my door, I look down at my small little landing, and I notice a slight difference, a strange imperfection on my landing. And as I look, there's this little brown lump. And as I look closer, it's a bat. It's this tiny little bat that is curled up sort of on my landing and just sort of curled into this little ball. And I sort of see it and I realize I have to deal with this somehow. This is also not the first bat that I've had in this apartment. The first bat that we had, we tried to call animal control late at night, and a Troy PD, a Troy police officer showed up with hands sort of resting on guns, snapping his gum as he arrived to deal with the scene. So I didn't really want to call and deal with anybody. I also had heard from a friend, Andrea, that if you did call someone, what they were going to do with that bat was take it and put it in a freezer until it slowly sort of went into hibernation so they could kill it and test it for rabies. And I didn't want to harm this little thing. He looked tired and just sort of scared and lost, and I just kind of wanted to get him out of there. So what I decided to do was take my these gloves that I had, because I didn't want to touch him. I wanted to help him, but in case he did have anything, I didn't want to touch him directly. So I went and got on a nice woolen mitten to bravely grab this bat that was huddled on the top of my landing. And as I went to reach down and grab him, he somehow seemed to unhinge his jaw and open it into this yawning, hissing, awful pit that I had to recoil from very bravely as I looked down at this creature who I desperately wanted to save, but had no interest in me saving it. So I decided the next best thing to do would be to get some Tupperware out of my cabinet and to sort of strongly shove him into the Tupperware container where I could then get him out. So as I went and got this Tupperware container, I tried to get it close to his little bat butt, and as I got close, he hissed and screamed at me again, not wanting any of my help. And I mustered up and I just sort of squished him in, hoping that he would be fine. And as I looked at him in his little Tupperware container with his, of course, protective paper towel, he didn't look particularly pleased. And as I held him there, my downstairs neighbor, similarly coming out, having a similar Sunday, Monday type of schedule, came out with his keys and his pajama bottoms and looked up at me with my keys and my pajama bottoms and my Tupperware full of bat and said, "Hey, what do you got there?" And I said, "A bat." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "It was on the landing. I'm saving it." He's like, "Okay," took his keys and went down the stairs. And it's in that moment I realized I had the intention of saving him, but I had no idea of where to take him. He was exhausted, and after fighting with me to be saved, he's even more tired. So as I'm trying to consider where to take him in my environs, I know that the most natural place that I can take him, that I am thinking of in the moment, is the old abandoned tenement building not too far down the street has become overgrown with different bits of foliage and trees and things like that. So I decide that is the safe, wild place while I will take him. Of course, this safe, wild place is right near the Congress Street Bridge, where it loops around. So there's a nice entrance ramp right near this nature that I'm taking him to. So I walk down the sidewalk in my pajama bottoms with my bat in my Tupperware container and take him down to nature where I can release him, where I take him in the Tupperware and again, very bravely shake him up onto this ivy that's sort of coming down. And as soon as he lands in the ivy, he sort of spins around and looks at me and leaps up into the air and starts coming at me, which is where I say, "Shit, he's pissed," aloud for the world to hear. And as he flies toward me and I back away, Tupperware in hand, he sort of realizes how fatigued he is and flies over toward this entrance ramp, where I'm now thinking, great, I've just invented one of those videos where you let the bunny free and the eagle comes down and takes it away. I'm going to release him and then some Nissan Stanza is going to come and nail him. Game over. So much for my bat friend. And as I watch with fear trying to save him, he comes over and lands on the side of the entrance ramp, just sort of resting there on the metal pole. And I don't know what to do but I have to move my car. So I leave and I move my car and I come back and he's still there, kind of still tired and shaking, and gives me a good hiss to let me know that he still doesn't want to be saved. And I left and I came back another 2 hours later and he was still there, just sitting, seeming like sleepy, blinking his little bad eyes, a little less pissed. And I left and I come back one last time and he was gone. So I assumed that he flew back out somewhere, strength regained, back into the world. But I just thought about how hard it was to do that good deed. He could have still had rabies, I don't know. But the efforts it took, despite what I knew he needed to save that little bat, is just something that I've been reflecting on of late. So that is what I wanted to share to sort of start us off tonight. Yes, thank you to my audience of two here in the studio. So, yeah, anything you want to say, Kat?
I love the optimism that your story ends with, that
Yeah.
your bat was rejuvenated and flew off into the wild.
Yeah.
And I am not at all going to mention that maybe coronavirus came from bats.
You can't link the bat to what's happening now, Kat. There's no way.
I won't do that.
It wasn't me.
Who's our next storyteller, Alex?
Our next storyteller is Sue Ciampa. I butchered it again, even though you said it just moments ago. She's been telling stories on stage with emotional, high stakes, and lowbrow humor since September 2017. She has told stories at the Front Parlor in Troy, the Howl Story Slam in Bolton Landing, the QED in Astoria, and can often be seen and heard at the Cafe Lena Storytelling Open Mic in Saratoga Springs. She is currently working on a long-form storytelling show about her dogs rolling in human shit in Tompkins Park, and on her mother's Alzheimer's disease and other tragic comedies. So without further ado, take it away, Sue.
Thanks. I just want to note quick, we got a couple storytellers who are not muted. I don't know if it's going to throw, but just a heads up. Thanks for joining us in your hunker bunkers. So it's Sunday, this past Sunday. It's 7 a.m. and I'm making borscht. I've been up since 3 because I'm freaking out and I need to get out of my head. So I'm just going to town with some beets and potatoes. And what I was freaked out about was not actually the pandemic, which is probably what I should be freaked out about. But it was actually that I'd gone to Honda 2 days ago, 2 days before Sunday, Friday, and negotiated a lease that I'm now not feeling great about. And I mean, I felt awesome about it at the time. I had this big plan. I've never bought a car before, but I was going to do it by myself. I did some research. I'm a librarian. I figured out how a car price breaks down, like what tricks they might pull. And I just went in, negotiated a lease for a very low-end Honda Fit. I took a picture of it, sent it to my best friend, and was like, she's a basic bitch, but she's mine. I'm just super proud of myself. And Sunday morning, I am replaying this, how I went in strong and wrong to a Honda dealership, and I fell for all of the tricks. And I didn't read what I signed. I didn't get a copy of what I signed. I put money down, and now this feels like it's going to be an irreversible financial decision. So I am just dealing with the beets and potatoes as best I can. I put them in the oven, and then I'm looking online at research. It's looking pretty bleak, just trying to figure out how to get out of this. And when I take the beets and potatoes out of the oven, I realize that I forgot to put in a shallot. P.S. You can see me. I'm a white girl. There was a shallot involved. So I forgot this. I chop it up. I put it in, some oil on the stove. I let it do its thing. I go back and get distracted in the rabbit hole. And the shallot burns. And I'm standing at the stove, turned it off. I'm just looking in this pot. And I'm thinking, time to cut my losses. If I can just walk away from this shallot, walk away from the $400 I used to hold the car, and just cut my losses now, I've still got beets and potatoes, and that is something. So I'm at like a 2000 on what's called the subjective units of distress scale, which is a 1 to 100 scale. So I need to call someone. So I call my friend Leslie, who is a calming presence, and I tell her all of this. And she listens and she says, well, what paperwork do you have? And I said, I'm such an idiot. All I have is the receipt for the $400. And she said, I don't think you signed a lease. I think you signed probably something to let them check your credit. I don't think your deal is done. I think you're going to be okay. And she recommends that I just go into Honda and try to work it out and get the deposit back. And I said, I feel like I'm going to be really emotional if I go in by myself. It was so stupid to do this. I don't know anybody who like knows how to do this or likes to go to a car dealership. And Leslie takes a moment and she says, actually, I love going to the car dealership and making the deal. And then more generously, she says, I don't think I'm going to have any clients Monday. Maybe I can go with you. And so I'm at least back within the 1 to 100 at this point. And when I text her to confirm that we're going to do this on Monday, she says, it'll be fun. I think she means it. So what I haven't told you yet is that the reason for all this rushing around on Friday and going to Honda was that later that day, I was ending my 7-year relationship with my until recently boyfriend. And in order to do that, I needed to sort out a car because the car that I have now is actually not mine. It's my boyfriend's sister's old college car, and I use it for work. So I'm an outreach librarian. I am in the greater Glens Falls area, and I bring books to homebound seniors, particularly Amish fiction, which is a thing. It's a whole like romance and mystery genre. The romances usually involve like a young Amish girl tumbling out of a buggy into the arms of an Englishman, like a 3-page kiss. And the mysteries are like an ex-Amish woman who's a detective investigating murders and psycho killers in her like local small Amish community. So a story for another time, but it's a thing. And this is my job. So I need a car for this job. So thus I need to get it sorted out. And the breakup actually goes, for lack of a better word, well. Ed's really human about it. We're both very emotional, but we get through it. And he also is kind enough to say that it's all right if I hold on to the car for a little while until I pick up my Honda. And I had my phone off while we're talking. And then when we're done, I turn on my phone and I see that I've missed 24 text messages. It's a text chain started by my supervisor at work, letting the reference staff know that we're going to be closing the library for a month for the usual, now we know, prevention or just attempts to kind of rein in COVID, not contribute to it. And this isn't public information yet at the time. And we're told to come in for a staff meeting on Monday and that we'll get more information. So Friday, to recap, Friday, Honda broke up with the boyfriend. Saturday, I am working at the library. The public has been notified that the library will be closing on Monday. So it's like a fire sale. It is insane in the library. And it's not until Sunday that I have a chance to actually like come down from what's happened in the last 48 hours. And that's the freak out. So now we're to Monday morning and I go in for the staff meeting, and very luckily, the board voted to pay the library staff while we're closed. And I know that for a lot of people, their work isn't closed and or they're not getting paid and or any number of circumstances. So I'm very grateful for that. And now this is contributing to the thing of, I don't need my car for a while. I don't really know what's going to happen with work because, we can only plan so far ahead right now. But I'm feeling a little bit more calm just knowing that at least for 3 weeks we're getting paid. And I go and meet Leslie, and we're at her house. We talk for a little while. We figure out a strategy. She gives me 3 very specific directives. She says, stick to your story. Don't say any more than you need to. And just because you're asked a question doesn't mean that you need to answer. So we go over, Leslie's driving. I'm working this story, like getting myself ready in the car. We get to Honda. We're met at the door by an older gentleman who I think probably owns the place. He didn't strike me as a floor salesman. I'm going to call him Papa Honda. So Papa Honda greets us. And I say, I'm here to see Taylor. And he says, I think Taylor went to lunch. Do you have an appointment? And I said, no, because I don't need to say more than that. And Papa Honda says, well, I think he's going to be back soon. And he ushers us into sort of a lounge area. And I should say that this salesman, Taylor, is very young. And when we were on the test drive, he told me that he was pretty new to the dealership. So when he shows up, he practically bounds into the lounge. He's got keys in hand. He thinks I'm there to pick up the car. And when he sits down, he says, I'm so glad you're here. Nobody's come in all day. And that's when I say to him, obviously things are pretty uncertain right now. It's not a time to be making big financial decisions. So since we don't have a deal yet, I'm actually just here to pick up my deposit. And I see him crumple and then try to cover it the way dudes do. And he says, "Is there anything we can do?" And I said, "No, just the deposit, thanks." And he goes off. And I'm pretty sure he's going to come back with like a manager or Papa Honda. It's going to probably get drug out. I'm dreading this. But he actually just comes back to get my debit card so that he can refund it. And when we're wrapping this all up, he said, "Is it all right if I follow up with you when things sort of stabilize?" And I said, "Why don't you give me your card and I can always follow up with you?" And he said that he was so new that he doesn't even have cards yet. I mean, poor buddy. It's going to be a rough time. But I am free and clear. I've lost nothing. I've learned a lot. And Leslie didn't have to say a thing. She was just there with me. Her presence was enough. So we leave the dealership. And as we push through the showroom doors, I swear to God, it's like a slow-mo shot of two badass bitches who have just taken care of business. And I am exhilarated and I am exhausted. But now I have time to figure something out. I mean, unless we all die of dysentery, because by the way, there's a lot of problems with people flushing things that aren't toilet paper that didn't come out of their bodies. And if we continue to have sewage ruptures, we're all going to go down like the Oregon Trail. And this is what I worry about. But I'm trying not worry about that. And what I'm looking forward to is that when we're back to whatever the fuck normal is going to be, I'm going to test drive some cars. And when it's time to make a deal, I'm going to have a badass bitch by my side. Thanks, guys. Yay!
Yeah, I really like the phrase "strong and wrong." Sue, also, there's some people looking for Amish romance recommendations. If you have any to make.
All right. In the moment, those the SVU type ones are the Kate Burkholder stories, which is Linda Castillo is the author. And then for all of the bonnet rippers, which are the romances, you can just like Google bonnet ripper. There's also a really good article by one of these authors called The Thrill of the Chaste. I mean, I'm in it for the puns.
Thrill of the chase.
That's what keeps me in it. But you can just straight up, there's just an endless wealth of them. And then there are these sort of cozy mysteries where it's always a pun on whatever the sort of setting is. So it's like a candy shop and it'll be a salted caramel and like toxic toffee. Yeah, it's those are painful.
Nice.
I like the good puns.
Well, then you will appreciate from Abby that she said your shallot turned into a shall not.
I love it. That's the stuff.
Love it so much.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. So we're going to bring around our next storyteller here. Our next storyteller is Angela Economist. She is new to the storytelling scene. Her interest was sparked by a decidedly unexpected foray into the world of online dating. When she isn't swiping right or left, mostly left, she spends her time promoting the arts as the marketing and development director, there it is, of Chester Theater Company in Western Massachusetts, and she lives in Northampton with her two cats, Natch, which is short for naturally. So take it away, Angela.
Hi. So Sue, absolutely, the Amish romances are a thing. My 92-year-old grandmother gets a stack of them for every holiday. So absolutely. Thanks for having me here tonight. And so I'll start. I was still in shock when I said to him that I was taking two things, our two cats and a shop vac. It was 2 weeks before my 50th birthday when my husband told me that our 20-year marriage was over. And I knew a few things in that moment. I knew that my life was about to go from pretty comfortable to pretty interesting. I knew I was going to have to move from my house in Chicago. And I knew without him telling me that he'd been having an affair, and with whom. And what I didn't know, though, was that in a few months, I was going to find myself in a parking lot in Western Massachusetts with my hand in a strange man's pants. I had agreed to go on a date with a man from New York. I live in Northampton, and he suggested the Clark, which was about halfway for both of us. And that was great because I love paintings. I love museums. And so we met and we walked into the first gallery, and I knew I knew that this was not going to work. He was pointing at paintings and he was telling me which ones were good and which ones were not good. And this was just not good. But I was in it for the afternoon and I tried to make the best of it. And by the time we were done, I was exhausted. But he wanted to take me to dinner. Now, I'd already made plans with friends in Northampton, so I had an out, but I also had time to kill before I had to leave. And I really, really wanted a glass of wine. So I said that we could go into Williamstown and get a drink. We drove in our separate cars and we parked, and I walked him into the very first bar on the street. We went in and we ordered, and nothing changed. I mean, I still wasn't interested. And so we finished and we paid and we left. And I was 2 parking spots away from my car when I realized that he wasn't next to me anymore. And I turned around and I didn't see him. And so I started walking back and I found him lying on the ground on his back with his hand across his chest. It took me a few minutes to realize that he had fallen. And I knew a few things in that moment. I knew that I was not getting back to Northampton for dinner. I knew that he somehow was going to have to get himself back to Albany. And I knew that he had very likely broken his right wrist and his car was stick shift. We pulled up to the entrance of the emergency room and he told me that I could just drop him off. But I mean, I had a decision to make in that moment. I could be the person who left. I wanted to go home. I wanted this day to be over. I wanted to have dinner with my friends. Or I could be the person who stayed. And so I told him to go in and get the process started, that I'd park my car. I made a few phone calls and that I'd be in. I walked into the waiting room and I sat down and I waited. And after a while, somebody came out from the back to get me. And I didn't understand. I mean, I'm not next of kin. I am not anything. I am basically this guy's ride at this point. But I went to the back and he was sitting there with his arm propped up on pillows. And he told me that they hadn't yet confirmed it, but everybody was pretty sure it was broken. And he wanted me to go with him to x-ray. Nope, I'm gonna go back out there. And then he asked me again, and I realized that he was still on a date and I was not. So I told him no, I was gonna go back out to the waiting room. And I went out there and I sat down. And after a while, a nurse came out from the back and she said to me, are you Joe's wife? No. We were on a first date. And she just kind of looked at me and she sighed and she sat down. And I turned to her and I said, why, what is it that you need? And she said, some answers to questions about him. I was like, yeah, I don't have them, obviously. And she just sighed again. And eventually she got up and she went to the back. And after a while, he came out. His hand was in a cast. And that's when I found out that he was going to have surgery. So as bad as my day was, his day was really a whole lot worse. We got in my car and we drove back. And I pulled up behind his car and he assured me that he was going to be able to drive. So I said my goodbyes. And he got out and I noticed he was struggling. He couldn't get his keys with his hand in a cast. And he turned to me, and this is a quote. He said, I trust you'll do the honorable thing. And that's how I ended up in a parking lot in Western Massachusetts doing the honorable thing and sticking my hand in that man's pants. Thanks.
Go. Yeah, so better dates since then, Angela?
No.
That was the highlight.
I wish I could say yes. No.
The time where you have a good story.
Yeah,
So there you go.
that's right.
You know, it makes me think in this sort of theme of daring to be human that what I love about your story, Angela, is we have these choices all the time to sort of show compassion or how we show up and how we engage with other humans. And even in the context of being surrounded, you're coming from a history of being treated maybe not so well and being in a moment with someone who isn't treating you the way you want to be treated, even in little ways, right? In the museum, that you still kept showing up in this really compassionate way. And, you know, we should all, I don't know what, it's just a nice model of humanity. So that's what I like about your story.
Yeah, you have some people commiserating with you, saying that dating sucks, you're not alone. And Joan says a reason to quit dating. So good that you kept with it, Angela. So
I mean, you know, right now it's just me and the cats, but
and that's enough. So thank you again, Angela. So we're going to move on to our next storyteller. So our next storyteller is Richard Lovrich. He began his career as a photographer. He's a graphic artist, a project manager, and was working out of his own studio in New York City and servicing clients in banking and pharmaceutical and fashion. He was also the Albany Times Union's first art director, where he spearheaded new sections and added special editions and won awards for illustration design and writing. He was most recently the Proctor's art director. He ushered the theater into a new period of explosive growth and acquisition, and he now lives in Guilderland, dabbing in portraiture and writing and performing of very short stories, and has been known to craft a few short plays, 3 having been performed by the talented Troy Foundry Theater Troupe. So without any further ado, Richard.
Thank you. Tonight I appear before you in this virtual space to address a new concern, one which we all share, every man, woman, and child, and that would be toilet paper. At this time, one person may lament not being able to visit their mother in an elder care home, while another is grappling alone with ominous symptoms. Yet another is fearful and is hoarding toilet paper. Life is a whole new ballgame for so many of us. My turn at bat looks something like this. Strike one. The world of touring Broadway is paused indefinitely, and when it returns, it'll be as a lamb and not a lion king. I've learned the hard way that getting laid off is not at all like getting laid, but at times it can feel like getting effed. Strike two. I'm in my 60s and therefore in greater danger of contracting or at least suffering the worst effects of the coronavirus. Strike three. I have a chronic pre-existing respiratory condition with comorbidities, too morbid to mention here. 3 strikes and yet, paradoxically, I'm not out. Despite the addition of scary news stories, medication uncertainties, inept leadership, and living with shortages like toilet paper. As a 21st century American, I've never had to ration anything except for a brief time gasoline. A brief time, but one that I've never forgotten. I drive an electric car out of concern for the environment, yes, but also always ready for the inevitable next material shoe to drop. Toilet paper. When a grammar school student, I lived in the Bronx with my mother, father, and brother in a small one-bedroom apartment. Cramped, my brother and I slept on the living room pull-out couch, which became available to us only after adult TV time each night. I remember Sundays in particular and how my sleep cycle was ruled by the waning of the Ed Sullivan Show, the final act of which was the official end of the weekend. The apartment had only 2 closets. I thought we had everything we needed, but in hindsight, apparently, we owned very little. Only now do I consider that at any given time, we had no more than 4 rolls of toilet paper at a time in the house. Where would they have gone anyway? Toilet paper. Our founding fathers were estimable and visionary, if fallible, leaders. What they were not is, by contemporary North American standards, very sanitary. President Adams remarked of a particularly ripe carpenter with whom he broke bread, "He might be smelled from one room to the other, so that these Republicans are not very decent or neat." Take that as you may. Maybe this was the reason for hoop skirts, allowing women, at least, to avoid smelly Republican carpenters. Sartorial social distancing. Perhaps we could bring them back. What more stylish way to be guaranteed a proper distance from one another than a hoop skirt? Good luck getting back into your Camry, however, or in a bathroom stall, which brings us back to toilet paper. There is every possibility that my medical care may be interrupted by the virus. Unlike toilet paper, the real need for infusion tubing and supplies, alcohol wipes, masks, respiratory medications, may actually overwhelm supplies. I receive a weekly medical infusion administered at home. My nurse, Brenna, called me Monday morning before coming over, and the conversation we had might have been lifted, with details only slightly modified, from a very tender Tinder conversation. I could wear a mask. Well, if you feel that it would be better, I could wear one. Whatever's good for you. Well, I guess we could both wear masks. Toilet paper. I suffer from alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, a rare degenerative inherited lung disorder caused by a damaged protein. And as a genetic disorder, it is circling the globe, inexorably extending its range from its long ago epicenter, thought to have been in Northern Europe. Once the bane of blondes, it respects no racial boundaries. When will it stop? When sperm cells stop inching their way over mountains, wiggling their way in deserts, swimming over oceans, and more lately flying through the air to reach their goals. And this gets to the point, which is not toilet paper. We alphas have had a head start. We have known all along what people around the globe are learning their own hard way only now. They are learning that one does not have to have done something wrong personally to be burdened with a very personal problem. That avoiding those things that can lessen the quality of our lives and shorten them is a perpetual responsibility. That disease knows no boundaries, respects no strong men, strikes indiscriminately, and will spare no one. One people susceptible to the same dangers and inoculated from neither the potential to inherit a genetic disorder nor to be subject to the scourge of a global pandemic. May we act in consideration of others and ignore the temptations to fan the flames of hate and ignorance. We are now all handicapped, but being handicapped, there's nothing left to do but to help those with greater needs than ourselves. We are one people sharing a delicate planet with genetic differences so small that to think of us as truly different from one another is a scientific absurdity. A delicate planet whose resources we must learn to preserve, like toilet paper. Thanks, everybody. I can't hear you.
Unmute.
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Yep. Hello. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that
Wow.
that story. Did so much from one role.
You're getting all sorts of applause and huzzas and great stories and beautifuls over here on our YouTube chat, Richard. You know, we've been wanting to have you with us for a long time. You were on our
Yes.
roster for our first live storytelling show, and and you weren't able to be with us.
That's right.
Because you were sick, and so there's something poetic about this moment when none of us can be together, and here you are with us. Thank you.
Yeah.
You have been one of my very, very favorite storytellers for a very long time with your micro stories. I don't know if people know about them, but they should go back to your Facebook feed and find them.
Oh, we could go on and on.
We could go on and on. We won't, but maybe that can be something that you can revive for us all.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I'd be happy to.
'Cause, Kelly M, Kelly M 17 also loves your speaking style. So maybe if you shared something later, that's where other people that I too would just love you to like narrate stuff in my life, if that's possible. Richard, there's all
follow us
kinds of
around.
time happening now, so maybe that's possible. So thank you again, Richard, for sharing that wonderful story with us. And we're going to move on to our final storyteller of the evening. So you might have seen Will if you come to any Crime Alley shows here. William Hughes has been voted in the Alt Weekly as one of the area's best comedians. He has performed at the Comedy Works, Improv Boston, and the Broadway Comedy Club. His sketch group, Crime Alley, as previously noted, was voted one of the best choice for comedy groups in the Albany Times-Union Readers Poll, and you can catch him at the MOPCO sometime soon. You're catching him right now. Some of these are dated. This one in particular, that there was a show coming up, but COVID has seen to that. So without further ado, you've seen him lingering at the top of your screen in some kind of murder parlor or something. William Hughes.
Thank you very much. We good? Thank you. About 10 years ago, I used to work in a plant in Auburn, Massachusetts that makes polystyrene packing peanuts. For those of you who don't know, Auburn, Massachusetts is a part of Massachusetts right next to Worcester. Auburn's where you go to get stabbed before you go to Worcester to get stabbed twice. On the way, I got the job by answering basically just answering a bunch of Craigslist ads for jobs because I had pretty much no experience aside from various warehouses and paper mills and crap like that. I got there where I met Brian, who I later came to know was named Alcoholic Brian because he lived in Auburn, Massachusetts, and that's what you do. Brian said to me, well, you know, we've got a bunch of other people who are applying for this job, which is a temp job, but we got to look around. To which I said, you could do that, or you could just hire me right now and not have to do that. And then he did. That was probably one of the weirdest places I ever worked. It was, I pretty much got the impression that almost everybody had gotten their job that way. There was me, there was Big Chris, who had the physical dimensions of a vending machine. And I fell in love with me pretty quickly, and it was a very, very sad ordeal. There was Omar the Christian, who was a Jehovah's Witness and was in constant battle with me over Big Chris's soul. There was Douchebag Dennis, who I'm not going to dignify by talking about him anymore. Then there was Cocaine Danny, who was my immediate boss and was a great boss. He was actually very responsible for a guy who also sold coke and a lot of really bad Molly any chance that he got. And then there was Racist Joe. Racist Joe was the shift supervisor for third shift. I worked second shift. Second shift, by the way, is usually around 2 in the afternoon to 11 p.m. This is why it was actually a particularly torturous time for me, because you'll know there's stuff that's alive in the day and stuff that's alive at night. Nothing lives at second shift. Second shift is a completely not a thing that you're supposed to do in nature. And this is also when I was not yet treated for my sleep apnea. So I was having perpetual nightmares about being chased by dogs every night. That's another story. Anyhow, Racist Joe had a gun. He actually, no, that's not true. Racist Joe had several guns. I know this because one day Racist Joe just kind of came in and brought his gun with him like it was show and tell. Like he's there in the break room, and there's a case, and there is this snub nose. I think it was a 38. I know he said it was 38 because he kept saying that it was a 38, and he was doing that gun guy thing We're like, yeah, this is a 38. It's got it doesn't have a safety, but it's got good drop safeties. I've got my friend's a cop, so he was able to sign off on it, so I can conceal carry this. I can carry hollow points in this, so if somebody comes in, by the way, when he said somebody, he didn't say somebody. He said another word because he was incredibly racist. So in case somebody comes in, I can shoot him, but it won't blow right through the guy, and it'll like stop in the wall, and it won't kill my kids. Which was pretty nice of him, considering that we found out later he hated his children. By the way, Alcoholic Joe could have been his name too. He's actually probably more of an alcoholic than Alcoholic Brian was, but everybody gets one nickname. Mine was Squidward for some reason. He was able to set aside his racism for Cocaine Danny because of cocaine. Racist Joe is the guy that actually told me that cocaine is magical because your money turns into cocaine and then it disappears. So what this facility did was it manufactured polystyrene packing peanuts. You know, like when you order a new phone or a laptop and you open it up and all these little bits of polystyrene just get stuck everywhere. We made that. It was an interesting note to me that stuff always gets stuck everywhere when we had a specific formula to make it anti-static, protect your laptop. This formula never, ever worked, ever. So my job was largely twofold. I would, one, just load hundreds and hundreds of bags of this stuff, about the size of a sleeping bag, and fill a 48 to 52 foot size trailer with it and like cram it in, like really flexible Jenga. The other part of my job was when we had to change from one kind of packing peanut to another kind of packing peanut out of the machine that made the shit, we had this long, like Play-Doh stretchy machine. That's what it looks like. It gets stretched out of this for like a dozen yards, and then it comes to this one other machine that just chops it into these packing peanut shapes, and then we heat it up later. When we're swapping from one to another, you get like this weird mixed bastard packing peanut stuff that no one on earth would notice isn't the right stuff, but apparently it mattered to some people. So my job was to take the old stuff and run it into a wood chipper until the new stuff was ready to go. This was significant because you can't hear anything next to the wood chipper, especially if you're wearing ear protection, which I was not because there wasn't any. What's important to know is that this particular time, Racist Joe was on vacation. It was more of a staycation, really. He had a bunch of time saved up, and he said, "Fuck it, I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks at home and getting hammered and cocked on vodka in Ativans." The thing about that is Racist Joe, it turns out, hates his family and they hate him. So that after about 2 days of this, he was looking for any excuse to actually get out of the house. So on his vacation, he would keep calling up Cocaine Danny, like, "Hey, just shut off the machine. Let's go to the titty bar, dude." The problem with that, and Cocaine Danny, being says like, "No, I know, Racist Joe, I can't do that. I'm here. I have responsibilities to the company and to my family." Well, while I'm doing the swap over next to the wood chipper, I look out the corner of my eye and there's Racist Joe just in the warehouse. He's not working. He's just there. He decided to take the initiative and come and bully Cocaine Danny into going to the titty bar with him. So, and he is, I can tell from yards and yards away, he is apocalyptically drunk. He is the kind of drunk that only exists in Massachusetts. And the Cocaine Danny, he goes to talk him down. He goes, they talk, there's back and forth. I keep going about my business because the interesting thing about shoving this stuff into the wood chipper, if you don't do it quickly, it starts to get stone hard because it hasn't been heat treated yet. And if you let that go for a while, then it just starts kicking this polystyrene shrapnel into your face. So I'm going as fast as I can doing this. And I look and I keep looking. There's a lot of back and forth and a lot of more back and forth. Joe talks with his hands a lot. He maintains this is because he's a direct descendant from Cicero, the Roman orator. He honest to God believes this. And I'm doing it, and they yell something. I don't hear it. And then I hear Cocaine Danny yell, "Hey, Squidward!" Because that's my name for some reason. And I turn and I look, and there's Racist Joe with a gun. Notice I said a gun, because this is a different gun from the other gun that I saw. And he raises it, racks around into the chamber, and closes an eye, and just kind of points it. Points a live firearm at me. I found out later that this was a 9mm, but at the time I felt it was something akin to an artillery piece because it was pointed at my face. And I did what I now know. I learned a lot from this. I did what I now know in my heart, what anyone would do in that situation, what you would do in that situation, what 99.9% of people would do. I froze and I waited to get shot. And then he didn't shoot me. So thank you, Racist Joe, for not shooting me. If you're watching this on the live stream, it's very much appreciated. And then he just went about his business. And I realized, oh, wait, the peanuts are packing up. I have to start keep wood chippering this. And I just kept doing my job. He did go, when I went about his business, what he actually ended up going to do was go just shoot a bunch of random stuff in the warehouse and factory. It was just us there. He shot a whole box of resin. I would later go on to find that he shot a bunch of the trailers, which it was my job to load. And no, he did not check to make sure nobody was inside it. He would go and point to the bullet holes weeks and weeks later about like, yeah, sorry about that. Had to shoot it. And like, no, you didn't, but he did. And his vacation continued. 2 days later, Cocaine Danny and I had to reignite the boiler to the room. And it was a big, massive industrial boiler with its own big, massive industrial furnace that had like this big, like submarine door that you could open to get into. And Cocaine Danny straight up said like, yeah, if Joe had actually shot you that night, this is where we would have put you. Then, yeah, so that happened. And I said nothing because I was a temp. And in my head, and he was a supervisor. And in my head, oh, I'm expendable. I had so internalized the idea of being expendable at that place. Like I was a permatemp. I was a temp for 2 years there. So I was just like, oh, I'm just a piece of machinery here. I can't rat him out. Like they would side with him. Like Alcoholic Brian is going to side with Racist Joe. Also, these were like super tough math hole guys. So like, I'm pretty sure if I'd have complained about it, they said, oh, this pussy never had a gun pointed at him before. He comes back from vacation, and after a lot of talking to myself and a lot of Black Velvet Canadian whiskey, I knew what I was going to say to him. And I said, Joe, I just want to clear the air here. Please don't ever point a gun at me ever again. To which he said, yeah, I'm sorry. I ended up leaving that job. And I stayed in touch with Cocaine Danny for a little bit. And I found out that about a week after I left, they replaced me with another temp, because that's what you do with temps. And Joe pointed a gun at that guy too. And that guy did rat him out. And Joe got fired. So yeah, that's my story.
Yeah.
Nice.
Woo!
Woo!
So I learned a lot that day.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure where to begin.
Yeah, I'm glad he's fired, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, which means now he's just out there and doesn't have to worry about anything.
No,
Yeah.
he's
Well,
just free now.
I'm glad to know that in fact the temps weren't considered so dispensable that they actually were dispensable in the physical sense of let's just throw them in with the popcorn and
The popcorn.
Yeah, I found out later I was actually temp of the month, and the lady from the temp agency came down with like a surprise because I was such a great temp for over a year. Because I'd been a temp for 2 years at the same place, they were like, "Oh, this guy's a superhero." Like, she came in, it's like, "Oh, we brought you a surprise." To which I said, "Is it health insurance?" And then like I just watched.
No, it's not. It's not.
No.
that. We can't. Never that.
I like to say that now I don't care and I'm not afraid of anything anymore, but no, I'm terrified about most things. Actually, it's.
you know, I love that moment of your story when you say like, you think about what would you do in that moment, and then you had the moment of realizing, oh, that's what I would do. It's just be completely terrified and like think, oh, I'm gonna die now.
I don't think deer are stupid anymore.
You don't think deer are stupid anymore.
Yeah, we get it.
They're reacting perfectly naturally. That's what you do because there's no part of your you didn't evolve with guns, right? For most of human history and most of ape history, there were no guns, so you don't have anything in your DNA to be afraid of them.
Yeah.
It's all a learned thing.
Yeah. So, Michael, why don't we go out to our, see everybody get out to our grid view, I think, and maybe unmute the whole gang here. Because we've reached the end of our night here. I hope all of you watching at home have been enjoying the show. Thank you for tuning in and coming and making this a part of your night. I hope you had some fun. I hope you had a little bit of catharsis. And I hope you two storytellers, you had some fun. And thank you all for sharing with us tonight. You're all fantastic and you're all wonderful.
Yay!
Thank
I do want
you.
to say one thing before we go. We did have one more storyteller who's not with us here tonight,
Yes.
Kelly Dunham. She is in COVID ICU at the moment. She has been in touch with us. She's doing all right. We trust that she is on the road to recovery and will be just fine. She sends her regards, and if we could all just send good, healthy, healing vibes her way, we hope we will have her as a storyteller on our Dare to Be Human stage in an upcoming show.
Yes, because she is
Healing.
kick-ass, and we can't wait to hear her story. We're sorry that you guys didn't all get to hear it, so you'll have to tune in next time when we do it. When hopefully Kelly is going to join us, and yeah, we'll do it all again. So
Next
thank you
show
again
in
to all of
May.
you. Yeah, next show in May. Thank you again to all of our storytellers, and thank you all at home for tuning in.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.